It's very interesting when you try and explain to people, because like the most common argument is, why are we going to spend money on people who in their eyes demonstrate that they don't deserve it? Do you know? But it's almost
Yeah.
it's strange to me, because it's, if anything, it's cheaper, you know what I mean, to try and
It is.
rehabilitate
It's
somebody, and to
much,
try and,
much cheaper.
yeah, like even I was reading, have you read the book Chasing the Scream?
No.
It's about drug. I was very interested in drug use and addiction and stuff like that. And they
Right.
talk
Yep.
about
Me too.
how they talk about how like the use of needle exchanges and everything like that, and decriminalizing drugs in general, has caused, or resulted in the cost of an addict being somewhere around like, $38 a month, whereas if they criminalize it, it comes out to $78 a month, because then they have to get a jury,
Right.
they have to get a lawyer,
Yep.
they have to get, it's just, it's
Right.
the same old, yeah, it's very strange
Yep.
to me.
There's a
Kind of.
famous mathematician who's famous for that called James Heckman. The Heckman
Mm,
Equation, which is, and he quotes the 1 to 7. For every $1 you spend on early intervention, you'll save $7 in later life services. So
but it's so
seven
hard for
times
people to be
cheaper.
long-sighted, that's the thing too. It's
Yeah.
like,
I think when people say that guy doesn't deserve it, spending that money on him, I think the first thing we should do is agree with them. They're right. He doesn't deserve it. We're not spending the money on him because he deserves it. His behavior was abhorrent, antisocial behavior that none of us want. We're doing it because, like you say, it's going to be much, much cheaper. If we punish him, he's going to turn into some psychopath that does a home invasion on you in 30 years' time. If we spend money on him now, he turns into a loving, caring, and he's a loving, caring parent who raises loving, caring children, and he's an asset to have as your neighbor. And we can do that now for 20 grand, or we can spend millions of dollars on protecting you from a home invasion. It's like, what
yeah,
world do you want to live in?
yeah, it's so true. Hey, I want to switch to, are you good for time, by the way?
Yep,
Uh,
I'm good.
Somebody was telling me about how the maturity, the ages of maturity are different based around what child you are within the family. So
Right.
second child, can you extrapolate on that a tiny bit more?
It's to do with what we was talking about before, about
Mm-hmm.
the firstborn child receiving so much more, relationship and partnership in that first year of life. Basically, firstborn children, that propels them, they reach their milestones faster. So I think when we
Gotcha.
talk about full maturation of the brain, when does the human on average show an adult brain scan? Because an adolescent brain scan is quite different. An fMRI of an adolescent is quite different to that of an adult. So there is clearly an adult brain scan. What's the average age that a human being shows an adult brain scan? And the average age now for the literature would be in the mid to late 20s. So what's
See,
that
I
about?
thought it was late. Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's about 27, right? But again, this is the average, the center of the bell curve. It doesn't mean you wake up on your 27th birthday and suddenly want to get a job and shower every day. It's 27 takes 100 people and gives you the average. And then what are the other things that influence that? Because actually 27 might be the average, but the normal range is 18 to 32. That means it's normal not to reach adulthood anywhere between 18 to 32. It can happen outside that, but it's considered normal. So quite a wide range, but the average is mid to late 20s. So what are the other factors that determine that? Well, the first one that's easiest to measure in the research is gender. Gender has a bit, because research puts everyone's results together and comes up with 27 for a person who's got no gender, just the average. When you put gender onto it, 27 no longer works very well because one gender's brain matures quite a lot faster than the other, literally grows quite a lot faster than the other. So you will see one gender mature in front of you quite a lot faster than the other gender. So do you want to take a guess which gender that might be? Which gender do you think matures faster?
I don't know.
Yeah. So girls' brains grow faster. So
Sure.
that's what, the next biggest thing that we can measure in the literature is what we talked about, birth order. Yep. So if you just take those two, female and birth order, right? So if you divide it by gender, females typically show an adult brain scan typically between 18 and 24. So even the females taking quite a long time to get to an adult brain will still get there by 24. Yet the literature we're using 27 as the overall average. So clearly something's dragging the average down, right? So that's got to be the male brain, because the normal range for a male to show an adult brain scan can be anywhere from 22 to 32 is normal. So if males show an adult brain scan, males show an adult brain scan 22 to 32, females 18 to 24. The literature combines them together and talks about this imaginary average person with no gender who's mid to late 20s. So gender changes it. birth order again changes it. When I see girls are 18 to 24, if she's also the firstborn girl, didn't have to share a parent in the first year of life, I'd imagine she's closer to the 18 end of the spectrum. When they're not the only things that define it, but you could just simply say from that you'd expect a firstborn female to reach adulthood at about 18, and then you expect the other females who weren't the firstborn probably closer to the 24 end of the spectrum. Same with males. Then males who are the firstborn child and didn't have to share their parent with anyone in the first year of life, they're probably 22 end of the spectrum when they become an adult. But a male who's not the firstborn is probably closer to 32. Now that follows and it correlates because most of the people in prison are males who are not the firstborn. Most of the people who commit suicide are males who are not the firstborn. Most of the read and recovery class at any primary school is males who are not the firstborn. It becomes a risk factor to be a male who's not the firstborn just because you get lost in that average. You're always going to be behind the 8 ball. A firstborn girl is always going to be before the 8 ball. So she's doing everything earlier than you expect. Your firstborn female gets to school at 5 and she can already write her name and knows how to count to 100 and knows all the colours. And then the boy you had 2 years later gets to school at 5 and a year later he's put into read and recovery because he still really doesn't give a shit about writing his name. So it's understanding that both of those kids, if you take into account just their gender and their birth order, they're both entirely 100% normal.
Yeah.
But society don't know that. So what they do is they're saying to that firstborn girl, aren't you clever? Aren't you a hard worker? Aren't you a good girl? And what they're saying to the boy, because he's slower, even though it's just still normal for him, what they're saying to him is you're lazy, you don't try hard enough, you lack focus, you're naughty. And that's that socialization that puts boys who are not the firstborn straight away at risk just by being a boy who's not the firstborn. You know, they really are out of that if you just divide it by gender and birth order, then it's very clearly boys who are not the firstborn that fill up most of society's negative statistics.
Yeah. And what degree of autonomy, because I think one of the really inspiring things about what your work does is that it kind of indicates that we can kind of, we have a bit of autonomy over our development as people. What degree of it's, what degree of autonomy do adults have in shaping their behavior patterns as we get older? Let's say the brain is developed at 32. Obviously, just based on neuroplasticity, the kid is going to be way more able to change and adapt and mold. Do adults have a similar level of adaptability?
They can do. With an adult, it's much more about choice. So for us, it's things like diet. The 4 things that reduce your neuroplasticity in your diet are caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, and sugar. So CATS. There's an anagram, CATS, C-A-T-S, caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sugar. So certainly if you're loaded with all 4 of them, then neuroplasticity is going to be quite low. You're going to find it quite difficult. Whereas if you have those only in moderation and each of them is really low, then you've probably got lots more neuroplasticity. From a brain structure point of view, it comes down to this very, very most recently evolved part of your frontal cortex called the prefrontal cortex. And so that controls all the rest of the brain. It's good that we're 32 because it has to physically, it's the last part of the brain to come online. So it really is that very, very adult part of the brain that controls your behavior and stuff. And that if we use our prefrontal cortex, we can bring about lots of neuroplasticity and change our brain quite a lot because that's that executive function that sort of overrules all the other ones. The rest of your brain says, oh, no, I'd like to drink beer and drink coffee and watch television. Thank you. But your prefrontal cortex says, no, I want you to live a long time and lead a high quality and enjoying life. So you're going to go to the gym for an hour and you're going to eat a balanced diet. And it's your prefrontal cortex that takes charge. A lot of it's down to self-control. But to have that self-control, you've got to have a prefrontal cortex. If you're mired in addiction, then you probably don't have bugger all access to that prefrontal cortex, and you find it very hard to control your behavior. So it's why humans need the support of other humans. If you're in addiction, I think you need a support team around you to be your prefrontal cortex for you to get those patterns up and running. And then you've slowly got to take over the roles of the prefrontal cortex yourself. And that's why coming up in terms with addiction is a process. We've got to get that part of the brain online. And usually you do that in the support of others. But once it's up and running and you've got a prefrontal cortex, then success is relatively easy for people with a prefrontal cortex because you can make yourself, that's what self-control is really, making yourself do the things that you know will make you a better, happier, more fulfilled person. A lot of our answers to our own happiness are inside our head. We just don't do them. I know I would be much happier going to the gym 6 days a week, but I don't do it. I struggle with the self-control of getting there like 3 times a week.
I'm the exact. It's
a lot of us are just It is. It's and the Dunedin multidisciplinary study really highlighted that actually self-control is what the academics call it. Self-control is the number one factor in how well you do as a person, beyond your IQ, beyond your parents' wealth and income, and beyond every single factor that you can measure in the research. The biggest influence on your outcomes is your ability to self-control. And really, that's like a muscle. You just practice that. Everyone's got self-control in some areas. You see a lot of people have very good self-control. They will for getting up and going to work, but they've got no self-control for, I should get up at 7 o'clock and start building the fence. But when it's just a should, but not a have to, the self-control disappears. Can't get out of bed. But they've got no problem getting out of bed and going to work and are never late for work. So you can have some self-control in some areas, but not particular types. And you really need to try and have self-control.
Yeah, I think that's the big appeal of like the 9 to 5, right? Is you're provided with a structure, and it's essentially someone else telling you what to do instead of doing stuff, So
you don't need the prefrontal cortex so much. You don't need self-control, but that self-control is the factor. The people that are happier are the ones who are getting some exercise regularly. They are the ones that are putting in place the mental procedures, because I deal so much with people around trauma and the human brain and trauma. And what's quite staggering is if any human being takes 6 seconds, counts on the count of 6 and breathes in for 6 seconds and counts going out for 6 seconds and then counts breathing in for 6 seconds. If you just have to do the 6, I'm saying 6 because you want to breathe full, but not really full, but whatever your number is to make it slow and filling your lungs and breathing out at the same rate that you're breathing in, just doing that for 2 minutes will calm the whole physiological system, will relieve anxiety, depression. The vast majority of the time, it changes the whole hormonal structure of your brain. So the highway of stress in your body that's causing you to be depressed and anxious and have low self-esteem is completely deactivated. And your prefrontal cortex has the biology to be able to come online. And that's 2 minutes that you don't need any money for, and everyone's got 2 minutes. And it takes incredible self-control to make people do that. I don't do it.
Yeah,
I struggle to do it. But I think the most times I do it, ashamedly, is when I'm teaching it to other people, and I have to stop and actually do it to demonstrate it. And then when I do it, I think, holy shit, that makes me feel plugged in and alive and wired, and I want to live my whole life like this. Even knowing that, I still haven't done it today. That self-control is something to really work on, but it is like a muscle. You can make yourself do things, set yourself up for success. If I want to make myself go to the gym 6 days a week, I can set myself up for success for that. I can have my gym gear ready. I can have I can make it as easy as possible for my future self to have that self-control.
There's like that thing removing like barriers to resistance, and it's like that. There's that one. This gets a bit weird when you start getting this granular with it, but this guy was like, I wear the same pair of clothes every day, and that's it. I just eliminate the choices that I have to make, like Steve Jobs. That was like the whole thing where it was just like, I'll just wear the exact same stuff, and then it's like decision fatigue. That's what it's called, decision fatigue, where it's like too many decisions, and hey, I got a few questions.
I think that's great if that fits his personality type. I would hate that.
Hell no.
I like to express myself with some clothes and some
super fashionable. I liked that black shirt you were wearing in the YouTube videos, man. That was looking very cool. The black top.
Cheers, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for watching that clip. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the left. And if you want to watch the full episode, hit the square on the bottom. To watch another small clip, go ahead and hit that square on top. And if you just want to listen to the full episode but don't have time to watch it, you can find this podcast wherever podcasts are listened to. Thanks. Bye.